Chapter 1. Shadows over Shady Grove. The air was crisp, tinged with the earthy scent of morning dew. As the first rays of sun dared to breach the canopy of towering oaks, the town of Shady Grove began to stir from its slumber. In this secluded refuge nestled among hills and forests, stories from bygone eras clung to every stone and whispered along the cobblestone streets. It was a place where time moved with the solemn grace of an ancient specter. Elliot Carter stood in his garden, his sanctuary, unfurling with blooms of uncommon beauty. Each plant had been carefully placed, nurtured into a tapestry of life that was both art and refuge. Yet beneath this facade of tranquility lay the echoes of a childhood marred by loss, shadows of a past intertwined with the very fabric of the town's history. He paused by an ancient oak at the garden's edge, its twisted branches etching patterns against the morning sky. There, nestled in the underbrush, glinted an object half buried, a small, ornate key that seemed to call to him from the depths of forgotten time. Elliot knelt, extracting the relic with the reverence of a pilgrim uncovering a sacred artifact. In his hands, the key was cold, heavy with the untold stories it might unlock. St. Elspeth's Church loomed over the town square, its steeple piercing the heavens like a guardian of ancient secrets. Inside, the air was cool and fragrant with the aroma of aged wood and candle wax. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting fragmented hues upon the floor, colors shifting like the allegories confined within the glass. The skeptical journalist, Ethan Marlowe, was not one for church visits. Yet here he was, not for faith, but for a story he couldn't quite grasp. His outsider status procured an invitation to observe today's ritual preparations for the ancestors' light festival. A fact-finding mission, he told himself. Yet something deeper stirred, a longing to uncover the truth beneath the town's rituals. Sister Agnes, the church's guardian of lore, moved with purpose among the parishioners. Her stern gaze softened as she approached Ethan. "It's been years since we've had someone willing to see the truth behind the colors," she murmured, gesturing to the windows. "History isn't only made by saints, you know." Ethan raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Sister Agnes chuckled, her laugh a rich, throaty sound. "You've heard the stories, surely. Every glass panel, every symbol, these are the footprints of those who came before us. Some truths are unwritten, hidden in plain sight." Their conversation punctuated by the distant tolling of the church bell, Ethan scribbled notes with fevered intent. The festival, cloaked in tradition, perhaps masked deeper narratives yet to unfold. The Whispering Pines estate loomed forlorn at the town's edge, its once majestic visage faded into decay. Ivy clung desperately to the walls, and turrets reached for a sky they would never touch. Here, within these echoing halls, lay secrets locked away, secrets Elliot was now compelled to unearth. Elliot's breath misted in the chill of the abandoned library. Dust floated, languid in the beams of pale light that trickled through cracks in the boarded windows. He approached a wall lined with tomes, his fingers trailing along spines of forgotten lore. A particular book protruded slightly, as if nudging him toward revelation. With a tug, the bookcase whispered open, revealing a hidden room. The chamber was small, lined with shelves that sagged under the weight of time. In the center lay a desk, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Elliot leaned closer, fingers tracing over handwritten pages, the musings of a mind preoccupied with protecting a legacy. Amid the chaos, a letter caught his eye, its edges yellowed with age. Its words spoke cryptically of a giant of wood and a hidden chamber, clues meant for eyes attuned to the past. A chill crept over Elliot as he realized the enormity of what lay before him, an invitation to unravel mysteries that could redefine the town he thought he knew. The old Whispering Well, draped in shadow and silent for years, lay waiting in the woods. Legend held that its waters carried voices from the past, murmurs woven into the land like threads in an endless tapestry. Today it stood forlorn, a sentinel guarding its secrets against the encroaching thicket. Elliot felt an inexplicable pull toward the well. Each step through the underbrush filled him with anticipation and a tinge of trepidation. As he neared, He could almost hear whispers carried on the wind, a symphony of time beseeching him to listen. At the well's edge, he peered into its depths, where light gave way to shadow. His mind raced with the symbology he'd discovered, the key, the letter, the chamber. Each piece a puzzle leading here, to this veiled sepulchre of history. Yet as he stood there, contemplation turned to certainty. A figure emerged from the edge of the clearing. Ethan. Marlowe watched him, a kindred seeker unraveling the threads of pasts that tethered them to the present. "You're drawn here, too," Elliot said, his voice barely rising above a whisper. Ethan nodded, their shared silence affirming a bond as tangible as the mysteries they sought to uncover. Here, at the convergence of their paths, awaited an enigma of their shared making, a journey poised to redefine destinies shaped by the shadows over Shady Grove. As dusk yielded to the encroaching night, the two men stood united at the threshold of the unknown. The well whispered promises of truths to come, though they knew not all would find resolution. For some shadows, once cast, can never be fully shaken. Chapter 2, Echoes of the Past. The early morning light sifted through the ancient oaks bordering the town of Shady Grove, casting long shadows over the cobblestones of Main Street. The shadows stretched like fingers reaching back in time, as if the town itself was a living memory, its secrets embedded in each tremor of the breeze that stirred the leaves. Shady Grove awoke slowly, its air thick with the perfume of anticipation for the upcoming Ancestors' Light Festival, an event rooted in tradition, but layered with forgotten truths. Elliot Carter stood at the edge of his sanctuary, where the vibrancy of meticulously arranged flora contrasted sharply with the time-worn town. The garden, his refuge, was silent but for the occasional rustle of a passing breeze that had once whispered secrets to him as a child. Nothing spoke now, however, except the growing unease clenching at his chest, an echo of stories untold, a whisper of mysteries yet to be unraveled. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Lucy?" The skeptical journalist's voice, steady but threaded with doubt, broke the tranquility within the musty archives of the Whispering Pines estate. Dust motes danced in the beams of light that slanted across piles of yellowed newspapers and discolored photographs. Lucy, the young historian, glanced up from a ledger, her eyes bright with a mix of determination and apprehension. "I've cross-referenced everything I could find on the festival's origins. These aren't just rituals, John. They're deliberate layers meant to hide something." Her tone was defiant, challenging the pervading silence. John arched an eyebrow skeptically, tapping a cigarette absently against the edge of a wooden desk. "Hidden layers? In a festival?" His sarcasm felt dry in the dense air of the abandoned estate. "Isn't that stretching it a bit?" Lucy frowned and handed him a faded photograph. "Take a closer look at this," she said, pointing at indistinct figures swathed in intricate robes. "These symbols, see the patterns? They match markings on the cemetery stones at St. Elspeth, and the attire itself is unlike anything recorded as traditional here." John studied the photograph, his skepticism softening into curiosity that danced on the edges of his expression. "This could mean anything, Lucy." "It could," Lucinda conceded, leaning back in her chair, her gaze firm. "But it could also mean that our beloved festival isn't just a simple homage to the ancestors. There might be a code in these garments, something related to those darker family secrets you're investigating." John ran a hand through his hair, tangling briefly with his thoughts as much as with his skepticism. "All right," he admitted finally. "Let's follow this thread, but if this leads to a dead end..." Lucy smirked, the confidence in her voice palpable. "Then we'll have a fine story to spin, but I have a feeling these echoes of the past want to be heard." Back at the garden, an unexpected visitor shuffled through the gate, gently knocking it open with a cane. The figure of the suspicious, elderly townsman seemed to blend into the shady corners of Elliot's sanctuary. His presence, a whisper against the whispering leaves, was both unsettling and strangely comforting. "Elliot," the elder's voice was a soft intrusion, reverberating with the weight of years. "I heard you found something intriguing while tending your garden." Elliot turned to face the townsman, his acute senses noting the barely concealed gleam in the old man's eyes. Yes, just a key, but it feels like it's pulling me towards places I'd rather forget. The past has a strange way of finding us, whether we search for it or not, remarked Mr. Harris, eyeing the grove. It holds its grip until we acknowledge its presence. Elliot nodded, understanding the unspoken wisdom in the words. Have you any idea what this key might open? Mr. Harris chuckled, a sound that seemed both mirthful and melancholic. It could lead anywhere, Elliot, perhaps rooms filled with terrors or truths. The key is less about unlocking doors and more about embracing what you're unwilling to see. With that cryptic remark, he turned to leave, the cane's rhythmic tapping gradually fading into the symphonic rustle of the oak leaves. The guard. N felt different once the old man had gone, heavier somehow, as though cradling stories desperate to be told. Evening descended gently over Shady Grove, with the dusk painting the sky in hues of fire and ash. The air was laced with the scent of wood smoke, and the town began to pulse with a quiet energy, its residents preparing for the festival. In the heart of Whispering Pines estate, Elliot now stood with Lucy and John amid the accumulated history, the air thick with expectancy and the distant murmur of approaching night. The estate seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows weaving among the relics of yesteryears. You're right, John conceded, examining a sheet of parchment Lucy had handed him earlier. The symbols are not random, but how does this tie into the stolen paintings? Elliot interjected, his voice soft yet resolute. The paintings were not just forgeries. They served as covers, literally and figuratively. Behind the paint lies the truth of the old crime, just as the festival garments hide these puzzling messages. Lucy nodded, her enthusiasm unchecked by John's lingering skepticism. We're peeling back layers of falsehoods, revealing a narrative that's been buried by decades of omission. But narratives can change, twist in unexpected ways, John countered, his voice contemplative, as shadows from the stained glass windows splintered over his face. We have to tread carefully, or we risk being ensnared in the past's web ourselves. The night deepened, and with it grew the resolute beat of festival drums from the town square, echoing across the estate, through Elliot's garden, weaving a hypnotic thread that united the night with the secrets entwined in the fabric of Shady Grove's legacy. Elliot gazed out a window towards the town square, the festival lights beginning to flicker into existence like nostalgia incarnate. He knew, deep within, the unfolding narrative was poised at the brink of revelation, a dangerous precipice where truths and lies artfully tangled. Let's unravel it then, Elliot echoed, more to himself than the others, the prospect sending an anticipatory shiver down his spine. The echo of drums continued, like the heartbeat of a town anticipating the unveiling of truths long dormant, and with each beat, Elliot felt the key in his pocket grow heavier, a symbol of possibilities yet to be explored, memories awaiting confrontation. And as the festival lights danced against the night sky, time seemed to fold upon itself, whispering promises of secrets that awaited beneath the storied soil of Shady Grove, a discovery that was already altering the fabric of Elliot's understanding. But just what would the revelation bring when the past's shadows finally lifted was a mystery that only the unfolding night could resolve. And with that inexorable pull of the unknown, Elliot stepped toward the growing light of the festival, a man on the edge of illumination. The festival's rhythm merged with the pulsing insights gathered in the suspenseful calm before the storm, hanging heavy with the intangible weight of knowing that once the key's secrets were laid bare, neither Elliot nor Shady Grove would ever be the same. Chapter 3: Shadows at Whispering Pines. The sunlight, a reluctant guest, slipped through the dense canopy of trees, casting tendrils of light upon the winding path leading to Whispering Pines estate. The air hung with a certain expectation, the kind that accompanied the rustling leaves whispering secrets that danced on the edge of Elliot Carter's conscience. As he reached the estate, A chill ran down his spine. The grand decay of the sprawling mansion loomed ahead, shrouded in ivy and time's forgotten touch. Elliot paused at the ornate, yet crumbling entrance gate. Memories of his childhood echoed faintly here, where laughter once mingled with the rustle of garden leaves. But now, silence reigned, broken only by the occasional call of a distant raven. He pushed the gate open with caution. The creak of hinges seemed to mirror the eerie song of lament from long ago. Inside the mansion, the air carried the musty embrace of forgotten years. Ghostly shadows flitted across the dust-laden floor as Elliot moved cautiously through the grand foyer, with its towering ceiling adorned with intricate frescoes, now faded and peeling. His footsteps were barely audible against the cacophony of creaks and whispers that were part of the house's eerie lullaby. "Elliot, it's different from what you remember, isn't it?" The voice belonged to Claire, the young historian with a keen eye for unveiling the layers of Shady Grove's history. She approached with a cautious smile, her arms wrapped around a bundle of rolled parchment. Her presence was a beacon of warmth in the otherwise cold aura of the mansion. "Time hasn't been kind," Elliot replied, looking around, the reality of the past both comforting and unsettling. "I see you found something," he nodded towards the parchment. "These," Claire began, unfurling the documents on a nearby table that stood resolutely amid the decay, "are records and sketches from the early days of the ancestors' light festival. There's a recurring symbol that shows up often, both in the festival garments and on these walls." Elliot leaned closer, the symbols clawing at the corners of his memory. They seemed familiar, echoing something he had seen among the dusty tomes and journals he'd unearthed in his recent research. "What do you think they mean?" Claire furrowed her brow, tracing a finger along the dusty parchment. "These symbols might be part of a code or message, a connection between what we celebrate and what we choose to forget." Before Elliot could contemplate a response, the silence of the mansion was shattered by an unexpected sound, a clang of metal against stone from somewhere above. Quickly exchanging a glance, both Elliot and Claire sprinted towards the source. The sound led them to an upstairs room, which had been converted for storage, its once beautiful chamber now cluttered with neglected artifacts. Elliot's eyes fell immediately on an old, dust-covered chest that seemed to hum with the resonance of untold stories. "Should we open it?" Claire asked, her voice swimming with reluctance mingled with curiosity. "We must," Elliot decided, his fingers gingerly brushing away the dust, smiling a little at the irony of how the true treasures of Shady Grove were always hidden in plain sight. The chest groaned open, revealing a tapestry of garments, newspapers, and a singular, locked journal. As they rummaged through, a small metallic object rolled out, a key. Its unusual design caught Elliot's eye immediately. "This key is eerily similar to the one I found in my garden," Elliot murmured, holding it up to the sparse beam of light sneaking through the curtains. "I have a feeling it's leading us somewhere important." Claire scrutinized the journal, noting its age and the leather worn thin by time. "The key might hold more than one purpose," she speculated. "It could unlock the secrets of both the estate and the town." Elliot nodded, a weight pressing against his chest as he thought of the parallel doors, both of history and heart, that remained shut, waiting for him to unravel their stories. It was dusk by the time Elliot and Claire made their way to the church. St. Elspeth's stood solemn and majestic under the rose-tinted sky, the spire looming against the canvas of twilight. The grandeur of its stonework was softened by the gentle illumination of the setting sun, casting ethereal colors through the stained glass windows. The church was quiet except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock, a giant of wood counting years of vigilance. Elliot felt a tug of nostalgia, strengthened by the gravestones that stood as eternal sentinels of memory, etched with cryptic symbols that whispered of forgotten tales. Father Cedric, an aging sentinel of both church and town, welcomed them with a nod. His eyes, though kind, held the depths of unspoken stories. "Elliot, Claire," he gestured for them to join him inside the dimly lit sanctuary. I see you have questions that seek answers. We believe the church holds a clue, Claire explained, her voice reverberating softly against the ancient stone walls. Elliot walked toward the clock, its hands frozen between moments of past and present, feeling the weight of history pulling at its measure. This clock, Elliot began, running his fingers along its intricate woodwork. It's mentioned in the letter where the giant of wood counts the years. We think it might mark a hidden location or passage. Father Cedric watched them intently, as if weighing the burden of knowledge against the value of revelation. The church has always been a haven for those in search of refuge and truth, he finally spoke, a subtle acknowledgement of their quest. Claire exchanged a hopeful glance with Elliot. It's beneath these stones, isn't it? With a reluctant sigh, Father Cedric nodded. The truth is buried deeper than you know, intertwined with the roots of this town. Uncovering it will change more than you can imagine. The shadows deepened as Elliot and Claire left the church, yet the path ahead seemed clearer. As they wove through Shady Grove's narrow streets, the whispers of the town echoed louder, a murmur of expectation clinging to the winds. Elliot's thoughts lingered on the journal and the key, and the promise they held, to untangle both the mystery of the past and the unresolved enigma of his own life. Each step taken closer to revealing those shadows born by time. Do you ever wonder, Claire mused aloud as they returned to Elliot's sanctuary, if unveiling these secrets will truly set things right, or will it just lead to more questions? Elliot hesitated, the garden's ancient oaks rustling their leaves in agreement, the antique key held tight in his grasp. Isn't that what all stories are, a quest foe? Our answers we may never truly find. Their conversation continued into the night, absorbed by the garden's quiet embrace. As the moon cast its gentle glow over whispering pines, and the town slumbered under its watchful eye, Elliot knew that the end of one journey marked the beginning of another. The path was laid, enigmatic and shadowed, towards a destiny shrouded yet brightly beckoning, the truth beneath the old oak. Chapter 4, Echoes from the Attic. The early morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of oaks, lending the town of Shady Grove an ethereal glow. The narrow cobblestone streets, still wet from last night's fleeting rain, sparkled with the promise of a new day. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of earth and possibility, a deceptive sweetness masking the uneasy truth buried beneath the town's surface. Elliot stood at the edge of his garden, his fingers tracing the contours of the old antique key, a relic that had begun to unravel the tapestry of his past. His sanctuary, surrounded by the whispers of ancient oaks, was both a refuge and a prison. Each petal of every bloom, meticulously placed, told a story, a tapestry of beauty entwined with sorrow. As he pondered the key's significance, the rustle of leaves drew his gaze back to the garden's edge. There stood his childhood friend, Lily. Her presence was both comforting and disconcerting, an echo from a time he'd tried to forget. "Elliot," Lily called softly, stepping over the low stone wall that separated garden from woodland. "I've been thinking about the attic in Whispering Pines. You remember, don't you?" Elliot nodded, memories cascading unbidden. The attic was a chapter not fully written, a place where shadows whispered stories of old wrongs and hidden truths. "I do," he replied, his voice a blend of curiosity and apprehension. "But what about it?" Lily took a moment, the morning light catching the gold flecks in her eyes. "I've recently uncovered letters from my grandmother. They hint at something there, something waiting to be found." Her words wrapped around his thoughts, enigmatic, yet charged with purpose. It was time to delve deeper, to confront those echoes. Whispering Pines' estate loomed as a forgotten sentinel, its grandeur faded beneath the weight of years. The sprawling verandas were now a trellis for wisteria, a cascade of purple blooms draped over cracked wood. Yet within, the walls held secrets in their silent creaks and sighs. Elliot and Lily approached the mansion with trepidation, their steps echoing in harmony with the morning's stillness. The door yielded with a creak, the air inside thick with the scent of time and dust long undisturbed. "Are you sure about this?" Elliot asked, the flickering light from their torches dancing against walls that had stood witness to past glories and present decay. Lily's answer was a determined nod. "I need to know my family's role in all this. Perhaps it can bring some peace." As they ascended the stairs, the air grew cooler, the passage narrowing until it delivered them to an age-old door, its wood softened by years but still holding fast. Elliot held his breath as he inserted the key, a whispered click granting them entry. The attic unfolded beyond, a domain of forgotten tomes and furniture shrouded in cloth, a mausoleum of memories awaiting resurrection. Amidst the attic's shadows, Elliot and Lily pored over relics of lives long past, dust-covered volumes and photographs, each image a fleeting echo of Shady Grove's once vibrant past. Lily's gaze fixed on a portrait propped against the wall, its oil-painted eyes hauntingly alive. "I swear I've seen this face before, in my grandmother's letters." Elliot leaned closer, the faint scent of oil and varnish intertwining with the dust. "It looks like someone who'd have been important, someone with a secret." Even as they spoke, the attic seemed to listen, its rafters holding a vigil over truths long buried. They continued their search, unearthing an ornate music box, a delicate thing of wood and porcelain, its song muted by the years but still promising secrets in its silence. Lily lifted the lid, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a letter, yellowed with age yet marked by a hand still vibrant with urgency. "Read it," Elliot urged, the words seeming to hover on the brink of revelation. "My dear Eleanor," Lily began, the letter's prose flowing like a current beneath her careful recitation. "Guard well the sins of our past. Whispering Pines hides what must never be seen, for beneath its glory lies the roots of betrayal." The words hung in the air, a bridge spanning past and present, a connection to a history shadowed and ominous. "What does it mean?" Lily questioned, her voice trembling with the weight of discovery. Elliot's mind raced, the puzzle of Shady Grove's secrets coalescing into yet more complex patterns. "I think we're not the first to seek out these answers," he mused, the L. Etter's implications, extending far beyond the attic walls. As they left Whispering Pines, shadows lengthening with the afternoon sun, Elliot found his mind drifting back to the stories that permeated Shady Grove's very soul. Each step felt heavier, as though the whispers from the attic wove into his thoughts, a tapestry of clues urging him forward, yet warning of paths best untread. Lily walked beside him, her silence filled with the same questions that clouded his heart. "What now?" she asked quietly, a look of determination tempered by an unspoken fear. Elliot paused, his gaze sweeping across the hills that surrounded their town, guardians of truth half told, secrets half kept. "We dig deeper," he said finally, a newfound resolve igniting within. As he spoke, a distant rumble resonated from beyond the hills, the sky echoing with an ominous promise. The festival was drawing near, and with it the unveiling of truths facing light for the first time. But for now, their journey demanded that they look into Shady Grove's past, a labyrinth of intertwining stories, histories etched in time like shadows on the cobblestones. The night crept upon Shady Grove slowly, the once sparkling streets now bathed in a soft, haunting glow. Elliot stood alone in his garden, the key clasped tightly in his palm, a hidden message contained in its cold, steadfast metal. The distant echoes from the attic lingered, weaving through the branches of the ancient oaks, whose roots buried mysteries as old as the town itself. It was a reminder that behind every shadow lurked the possibility of truth, a truth Elliot was beginning to unveil, one flickering beam of light at a time. Just as he turned to leave, a whisper shivered through the leaves. It was a voice both ancient and familiar, carrying with it a promise and a warning, a message meant only for those daring enough to listen. He stood still, breath bated, embracing the enigma of the night, a guardian amid the silence, armed with a key to secrets not meant to be kept. As the festival beckoned with its silent parade of histories, he knew one thing for certain. Beneath the surface of Shady Grove lay answers waiting to be revealed. Yet, with those answers, more mysteries would inevitably rise to the surface, pushing him further into the labyrinth he was only just beginning to understand. The real journey, he realized, was only just beginning. Chapter 5. The Murmurs of Past Shadows. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of trees, casting intricate patterns of light and shadow along the cobblestone path leading to Whispering Pines estate. Each step Elliot Carter took felt steeped in the stories of those who had walked before him, ancestors whose whispers now mingled in the gentle rustling of the leaves. The air was crisp, charged with the nostalgia of a time when the estate echoed with laughter and music, before silence descended like a shroud. Elliot paused at the estate gate, his fingers tracing the wrought iron curls as a sense of foreboding crept over him. The grandeur of Whispering Pines, though marred by decay, held a secret allure. Shrouded beneath layers of dust and tangled wisteria were memories waiting to be unearthed. The estate's presence felt almost sentient, echoing the very mystery that enveloped the town of Shady Grove. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "I knew you'd be back here, Elliot," said Claire, the young historian, emerging from the path lined with wilting roses. Her presence was as much a part of Shady Grove as the old mansions and tailies of yore. Elliot turned, offering a slight nod. "There's something about this place," he replied, his gaze sweeping over the estate. "You feel it too, don't you?" Claire's eyes held a spark of excited curiosity. "The hidden stories, the lives lost to history." "They're not so lost if you know where to look," Elliot responded, his thoughts drifting back to the day he unearthed the antique key, a key that seemed to fit not just the physical locks of Shady Grove, but the intangible ones of its past. Claire smiled, brushing a leaf from her notebook. "So, what did you find in the library last night? Anything that could point us to the chamber mentioned in those coded messages?" Elliot hesitated, the weight of his discovery sitting heavy on his chest. "It wasn't just the library," he began, recounting his night spent in the secret room behind the bookshelf. The pages of old journals had spoken of concealed truths, their silent voices synchronizing with the creaks of the floorboards. Inside the dim theatrics of the estate, shadows played across faded portraits lining the walls, faces long since forgotten. Claire and Elliot moved cautiously, each footstep carefully placed on the parquet floors that had weathered time's indiscriminate erosion. Claire's voice was a gentle echo amidst the old silence. "It's hard to believe that families who once hosted grand banquets here are the same ones with secrets darker than these walls." Elliot's hand brushed against the paneling as they made their way to the hidden research room, each step measured by the anticipation of uncovering what lay hidden. They pushed aside the dusty bookshelf, revealing a room cluttered with remnants from another era, letters, maps, and photographs now faded and fragile. "What about these paintings?" Claire asked, pointing to canvas propped against the far wall. Elliot approached cautiously. "The townsman believes they're forgeries meant to hide something. Look closely, Claire." His eyes traced the almost imperceptible symbols woven into the brush strokes, a language cryptic, yet somehow familiar. She squinted, the symbols slowly revealing a story. "They're marks, like the ones you found in the church." "A guiding path," Elliot murmured, more to himself than her. "If these tell a tale, then we're only reading the first chapter." Claire's eyes met his. "And the festival, is it part of this tale?" Elliot nodded slowly. "The Ancestors' Light Festival isn't just about honoring the past. It's a veil, a distraction from the truths buried beneath it." The afternoon sun bathed the town square in a golden hue, illuminating the excitement of preparations for the festival. Lanterns were strung between the arches, their festive colors vibrating against the backdrop of the quaint, cobbled streets. Yet beneath the gaiety, a tension lurked, a shared knowledge among the townspeople, masked by laughter and music. Elliot and Claire positioned themselves away from the bustle, their eyes scanning for the skeptical journalist, whose thirst for sensationalism had been curbed by a former alliance. The journalist's appearance was as sudden as it was silent, his sharp eyes glinting with an understanding Elliot hadn't expected. "There's a buzz around town," the journalist remarked dryly. "About the festival garments and the coded messages. You think they've been planted deliberately?" Elliot shrugged, not wishing to speculate. The festival was meant for more than just celebration. It's an expanse of code and symbol binding generations. And now, it seems, a story is unraveling. The journalist chuckled softly, albeit without humor. "You know, when I first came to Shady Grove, it was all about the stories I could spin. But now..." "Now," Elliot prodded gently. "Now I'm intrigued by the truths lurking in our carefully curated traditions," he admitted, a glimmer of sincerity escaping his seasoned facade. They observed the tapestry of the festival unfold, a dedication to heritage adorned with the weight of hidden knowledge. "Let's find where the festival garments lead us," Claire proposed, her voice a measured urgency. Elliot's mind wandered to the festival garments, intricate designs, each thread holding a piece of history. Symbols aligned, he thought, linking to secrets that went beyond the town's collective consciousness. As twilight descended, casting an ethereal glow over Shady Grove, Elliot found himself drawn to the old whispering well, nestled within the embrace of the dense woodland. The well, a relic enshrined in folklore, beckoned with stories untold, its chasm a silent keeper of the town's past wounds. He was not alone for long. The old man, known to many simply as the suspicious townsman, emerged from the shadows, his gait unhurried and perceptive eyes brimming with an understanding that belied years of silence. "You've come to listen to the well," the townsman said, his voice gravelly, yet oddly soothing. Elliot nodded. "I need to know what it's hiding, what the town's forgotten or chosen to forget." The townsman studied him for a long moment. "My father used to talk about the voices of the well," he confided. "How they echo through time, pulling at threads left unresolved. You're not the first to seek its answers, Elliot." "Did they find what they were looking for?" Elliot asked. "Perhaps they did, or perhaps the answers were too buried in their hearts for them to see," the townsman replied enigmatically. Elliot leaned closer, the whispers almost audible now, a confluence of regrets, secrets, and unspoken truths. The air was heavy with promise and potential, a weight both familiar and foreign. The townsman's gaze met Elliot's one final time, and a knowing passed between them. "Remember, the well reflects back at you the questions you ask," the townsman added quietly before turning away, vanishing into the forest as if he too was a spirit of Shady Grove's haunted past. Left alone, Elliot contemplated the depth of the well, feeling the pull of the unknown. As he withdrew the antique key from his pocket, its cool metal reassuring in his palm, he considered the path forward, each step a descent into the heart of ancestral shadows. He took a breath, aware that beyond the well's darkened maw lay more than just answers to a crime. It was a mirror to the soul of Shady Grove, and more dauntingly, to his own. The whispers grew louder, urging him onward. In that moment, Elliot realized the path he was meant to walk was not just through the annals of history, but through the memories he himself had long kept locked away. And with a final look into the inky depths of the old whispering well, Elliot stepped back, only to pause, an unsettling shifting of light revealing the outline of a figure peering back at him from the shadows. As he turned to call out, the figure melted into the night, leaving nothing but the faintest echo of footsteps to convince him he had not imagined it. The air grew still, and yet the question lingered, tangling with the whispers. Who else was seeking what lay beneath the old oak and its sanguine shadows? Chapter 6, Shadows of Revelation. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a rich tapestry of purples and golds across the skies above Shady Grove. The town lay cocooned in a hushed serenity, its cobblestone streets echoing the timeless secrets whispered by the winds. As twilight descended, the ancient architecture seemed to come alive, the shadows stretching long and ethereal, as if reaching into the past. Amidst this slowly darkening backdrop, the flickering flames of lanterns began to light the way to St. Elspeth's Church, where an important gathering was to take place. The church's gray stone facade shimmered in the lantern light, casting eerie reflections off its stained glass windows, which told stories of the town's history and its enigmatic rituals. Elliot Carter strode purposefully towards the church, his mind a cacophony of thoughts as he prepared to confront the truths that lay hidden beneath the veneer of heritage and tradition. The air was thick with whispers of festival secrets, more palpable than ever. The young historian, Margaret, had joined him, driven by a restless curiosity and a sense of duty to unmask the truth behind the ancestors' light festival. They paused at the entrance, exchanging an anxious glance before stepping inside. The church's interior flickered with candle shadows as the townsfolk gathered in pews, speaking in murmured tones punctuated by the flickering glow of the church's vast chandelier. The atmosphere was one of reverence, tempered by an undercurrent of apprehension, much like holding one's breath before a great unveiling. Elliot adjusted his jacket as Margaret approached the podium, her young yet firm voice resonating through the old stone arches. "Ladies and gentlemen of Shady Grove," she began, "our town, enveloped in history and pride, sits tonight on the cusp of revelation. In our festival garments, I discovered a tale woven with both celebration and neglect, a past long obscured for far too many generations. We are meant to honor our ancestors," she continued, her gaze moving from face to face, each bearing the weight of expectancy. Yet, beneath the embroidered rainbows of our garbs lie symbols of pain, hinting at injustices we have ignored in our reverence. A gasp rippled through the crowd, whispers darting like fireflies between the pews. Elliot felt the room's temperature drop slightly, the tangible grasp of history chilling the air. He stood close by, feeling the collective shift, a realization that the foundations of their traditions were not as solid as believed. "These coded messages," Margaret pressed on with growing resolve, "emphasize not only the celebration but also the frailties that have shackled us to bygone errors." The crowd fell silent, consideration etching itself onto their worn faces. Elliot felt a stir at his side, turning to meet the skeptical journalist, Thomas Elwood, who had now found himself uncharacteristically drawn into the fray not by mere curiosity, but by a genuine need to unearth and share the untouched narratives buried in the town's past. Thomas nodded slightly at Elliot, a tacit acknowledgement of their common purpose. "It seems our small town is larger than its borders," he muttered, his voice carrying an introspective lilt that suggested his increasing acceptance of their shared mission, a far cry from his earlier cynicism. The chatter was rising again, tension woven into every thread, when a voice cut through the crowd, gray and crackling with authority. The elderly townsman regarded for his vast knowledge of Shady Grove's history, yet steeped in his own peculiarities. Elliot and Margaret met beneath the boughs of a gnarled oak tree shortly before midnight. In the privacy offered by the ancient oaks, their hearts lightened, albeit momentarily, by the sense that they were unraveling a tale larger than themselves. "The festival," Margaret said, her voice thoughtful, "it's both a masquerade and a truth-teller. It hints at injustices wielded in our ancestors' names. This knowledge, it changes everything." Elliot nodded, the shadows playing across his face reflecting the darkness within. "There is much I do not understand, but I feel as though the very roots of this town are steeped in deception. Where does low Yalty end and complicity begin?" Margaret looked at him sharply, realizing the complexity of conscience that underpinned Elliot's remark. It was a question pertinent to the town and a personal conundrum for Elliot, whose life had interwoven with the town through family, friendships, and the timeless mysteries they were compelled to solve. Suddenly, the stillness was broken by a soft rustling in the bushes, revealing the figure of Thomas making his way through the grove to join them. His usual skeptical demeanor was replaced by an earnestness that made him seem almost vulnerable. "I've found something at the church," he declared, breathless. "There is more to the grandfather clock than folklore. Where the giant of wood counts the years." It led me to another clue. The three of them exchanged glances, a current of excitement bolstering their tired spirits. Here, amidst the whispering leaves, was the next fragment of the puzzle, waiting to be pieced together under the cover of night. Elliot's heart beat a little faster, a silent crescendo as his thoughts whispered of both hope and fear. Perhaps the past is not gone, but merely hiding, waiting for us to understand. They scattered leaves and twigs underfoot as they began to move, the path ahead obscured by shadows, yet illuminated by the spark of discovery that glowed within their hearts. As the hours wore on, the Whispering Pines estate loomed ahead, its silhouette a haunting presence against the pale light of the moon. Elliot, Margaret, and Thomas approached with caution, aware that within its decaying walls lay the secrets that had drawn them together. The mansion's entrance creaked open at their touch, revealing the vast halls where history had muffled its cries for decades. Dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights, the space silent, but for the echo of their footsteps seeking answers. Elliot led them through the labyrinthine passages towards the library, where he had first stumbled upon the letter. Stopping before the grand bookshelf that concealed the room which housed the town's long-buried truths, he felt a familiar tug of anxiety and anticipation. "This is where it all begins again," he whispered, his voice scarcely more than a breath. Margaret balanced a hand on his shoulder, grounding him with her silent support, while Thomas stood at his side, his notebook at the ready with a new purpose beyond storytelling. The bookshelf swung open, and they entered the hidden chamber, awash with moonlight filtering through a single, cracked window. The room was a shrine to dusty records and weary tomes, guardians of an era the town had long left unspoken. Amidst the chaos of papers and cobwebbed shelves, Elliot reached for a particularly aged volume that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. A personal account scrawled decades ago, markings that had escaped the tandem narratives now unfolding. As he unwrapped the manuscript, its pages crackling under his touch, an unexpected name leapt forth, a chilling echo of a friend lost to the sands of time. The air hummed with the promise of revelation, and Elliot sagged against the nearest table, overwhelmed by the ghosts that circled ever closer in their dance between past and present. In the quiet that followed, a single thought took hold, both a question and a declaration of purpose. How much of the shadows do we become when we convince ourselves we act in the light? An answer would not come easily, yet in this moment, beneath the pressing weight of history and heartache, Elliot found the strength to continue. The chill of realization pricked their spines as they uncovered more pieces of the town's fractured past, weaving threads of interconnected tales until finally, at the heart lay the unsuspected figure, a linchpin of both joy and tragedy. Their steps would lead to the well, the ethereal whispers of water and truth mingling in an unyielding tide. Dawn came upon Shady Grove, painting the town in soft hues with an ethereal brushstroke. As Elliot and his companions emerged from the mansion, they felt the inevitable approach of a storm, not of weather, but an unraveling of history that would shake the very ground beneath their feet. Elliot paused at the garden's edge as his mind retraced the map of intertwined lives, leading to the heart of the secret buried beneath the old oak. A pulse echoed within him, mirroring the murmured heartbeat of the town. Then came the voice of Thomas, clear and irrevocable as a sunbeam cutting through fog. "Elliot, there's more. The well, it must be the key to everything." Their thoughts entwined, resolving that the cryptic words would guide them to edges undefined, where light and shadow fused into the truth yet unseen. The path to the well, a place of both finality and new beginnings, awaited them. Elliot nodded, his resolve firm. Whatever awaited them, he knew that together they carried the strength to unearth what lay hidden. Shady Grove's secrets would give way to the light they sought, a light unmasking the layers of deception, tyranny, and devotion. As the three of them turned from the estate, their course set, The chill morning air held a promise, an echo of forgotten whispers urging them onward. Each step reverberated with the echoes of Shady Grove's past, each breath a pledge to see this journey through. "This is just the beginning," Elliot murmured determinedly, acknowledging the shadows they would soon dispel, drawing all the more nearer to the heartbeat at the heart of the well, the future of Shady Grove hanging in balance. For the night harbored yet more secrets. They would need every piece, every shadow's depth, to cast a new dawn. With every heartbeat, every step, Shady Grove's mysteries whispered of the truth that would soon shine beneath the old oak. In the silence, conspiracies awaited, bound by the well's deep-seated whispers. The key to Elliot's past and Shady Grove's very foundation stood at the precipice of revelation. Chapter 7. Shadows and Whispers. The morning sun cast a kaleidoscope of colors through the stained-glass windows of St. Elspeth's Church, painting the stone floors with patches of red and blue. The air was thick with the scent of wax and aged wood, a silent testament to the myriad prayers cast up to the heavens through the years. Elliot sat in the second pew, his eyes tracing the intricate patterns in the glass, his mind far from the present. The church was a place of peace, but today it felt heavy with the weight of secrets. The echo of footsteps reverberated through the nave as the skeptical journalist approached. His arrival was unceremonious, his footsteps firm yet hesitant, a paradox embodied in a single man. "Elliot," he called out softly, as though not wishing to disturb the hallowed silence. Elliot turned, offering a nod of acknowledgement. "Here to light a candle for the troubled souls we chase," he asked with a wry smile. The journalist chuckled, though his eyes remained somber. "More like searching for the light myself. Found anything new?" Elliot shifted in his seat, his hand brushing absently against the smooth wood of the pew. "I followed the clues from the cryptic letter to the grandfather clock," he said quietly, as if to speak too loudly might invite unwanted ears. "But the clock offers more riddles than answers. Its hands move to a tune only the past knows." "You mean the code we found inscribed on the clock's face?" The journalist took a seat beside Elliot, his eyes now fixed on the altar bathed in morning light. "Exactly," Elliot replied. "It's like it's counting down to something, a looming revelation or an inevitable end." "What if it's neither? What if it's a beginning?" The journalist's voice was tinged with curiosity. Elliot pondered this new perspective, his mind weaving through the tangled web of possibilities. "The beginning of what?" he asked. The journalist shrugged, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "That's what you're here to find out, isn't it?" In the heart of Shady Grove, the young historian stood before a cascade of festival garments suspended from wooden beams in the attic of Whispering Pines estate. Dust danced in the shafts of light that peeked through the narrow windows, highlighting faded patterns of colors that whispered tales of the town's venerable ancestors' light festival. She lifted a sleeve, tracing the delicate embroidery with her fingertips. Restored with care, new stitches seemed to glow with a faint luminescence, as if preserving the ancestral spirits within the fabric. A rustle behind her drew her attention, and she turned to see the suspicious elderly townsman emerge from the shadows. His gait was measured, each step echoing with stories of yesteryears. "You have a keen eye for the past," he observed, his voice a blend of caution and admiration. The historian inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Every thread here is a piece of a larger puzzle," she replied, her voice steady. The townsman approached, his gaze sweeping over the garments. "This puzzle, as you call it, is more than just history," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a tapestry of secrets." Her interest piqued, the historian set down the garment she held. "What do you know of it?" "Only what the garments tell me. They sing of old grievances, uncovered truths, and the shadows of hidden deeds." He paused, glancing around as if the very walls might be listening. "Could they be linked to Elliot's investigation?" she asked, a spark of eagerness in her tone. "Perhaps, or maybe they could unveil stories long buried to preserve harmony," the townsman mused, his eyes narrowing as memories flitted past like birds at dawn. Meanwhile, beneath the Whispering Pines estate, the cold stone of the hidden research room was a sanctuary from the outside world. Its bordered confines, filled with volumes of forgotten knowledge and evidence from a bygone age, invited enter. A spective silence. Elliot stood among towering stacks of yellowed paper and brittle photographs, each one whispering its own story. The smell of aged leather and faded ink was profound as he sifted through the meticulously kept notes, documents that detailed town events, family lineages, and hint-laden messages of old crimes. One particular letter caught his attention, its edges singed, its content veiled with enigmatic poetry. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of his childhood friend, whose footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor connecting the room to the rest of the estate. The friend appeared at the threshold, a mischievous grin breaking the solemnity of the ambient room. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the friend teased, leaning against the frame of the doorway. "Sometimes it feels like I have," Elliot replied, holding up the letter. "This has your old attic written all over it." His friend crossed the room to peer at the letter, their eyes scanning its cryptic verses. "The attic noises, it all ties back more than we'd ever imagined," they murmured, the jest in their voice replaced by solemnity. "You think it's more than childlike fantasy?" Elliot asked, his own skepticism punctuated with curiosity. "More like echoes of things we were never meant to understand," his friend replied, their gaze fixed on the mystery that lay before them. Elliot nodded, absorbing the weight of their shared past, mindful of the path that lay ahead, a journey through shadows and whispers, where the past and present entwined in an unending dance. The wind had picked up by late afternoon, rustling the leaves that clung precariously to their branches over Elliot's sanctuary. The atmosphere felt heavy with foreboding, an unspoken promise of storms both literal and metaphorical. Elliot stood in the garden, surrounded by the familiar scent of earth and the comforting presence of the towering oaks. As he traced a path through the vibrant blooms, an unexpected rustle behind an ancient oak caught his attention. From its depths, a figure emerged, unexpected yet familiar, the young historian, eyes glistening with both trepidation and resolve. "Elliot," she called out, her voice a blend of reverence and urgency. He turned to meet her, noticing the garment she held clutched in her hands. "More discoveries from the attic?" he inquired, an eyebrow arched in question. She nodded, brandishing the delicately embroidered cloth. "These symbols," she started, her breath catching, "they mirror those on the paintings." Elliot's interest piqued at the connection. These links were threads in the tapestry of curious fate. "And you think they point somewhere?" he mused, fingers reaching to touch the garment's mysterious symbols. The historian met his gaze, determination lighting her eyes. "Yes, they lead us deeper into the mystery we're unraveling," she assured, conviction ringing in her tone. "And closer to the truth?" Elliot asked, more for confirmation than inquiry. "Or further into the abyss," she replied softly, a shadow crossing her face. Together, they stood beneath the ancient oak, surrounded by secrets the roots dared not whisper. As the winds swept through Elliot's sanctuary, the promise of revelation mingled with the uncertainty of what lay hidden. In that moment of shared discovery, Elliot felt both exhilaration and dread for the journey ahead, towards a well of secrets that promised resolution, yet whispered warnings of the shadows within. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, enveloping the sanctuary in shades of twilight, a lingering thought took hold. That some truths were hidden for a reason, but the cost of unveiling them remained unknown. The clock chimed midnight in the heart of Whispering Pines estate. Elliot stood in the library, surrounded by the silence that swallowed the ticking of the hidden research room's secrets. Ian braced himself against the fireplace mantel, staring at flames that flickered within the cozy room, brief illumination against encroaching shadows. "Where do we look next?" asked the skeptical journalist, interrupting the soft crackle of wood. "We follow the threads," Elliot answered, resolve threading through each word. The garments and paintings will lead us. And when we find out what's truly concealed. Elliot met the journalist's gaze, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. We decide if there's secrets best left in the past. As the moon cast silvery light through cracked glass, the estate seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the secrets it guarded so fiercely. Elliot knew the path was set, but the destination was as obscure as the shadows that clung to Shady Grove's heart. Little did they know, beneath their steps, whispers of old-awaited awakening, poised to rewrite the very fabric of their reality. And as the winds outside swept through the garden beyond, the trees murmured their approval, a soothing lullaby of unseen promises. In the shadows of the past and the uncertainties of the future, Elliot's journey pressed onward, driven not by the fear of what lay uncovered, but the courage to face what must be known. Chapter 8, Shadows Cast Long. A chill breeze wove its way through the cobblestone streets of Shady Grove, stirring the ancient whispers that clung to the town's storied past. The sun cast long shadows over the quaint facades, painting eerie patterns along the narrow alleys. It was a day like any other in this secluded enclave, yet beneath its picturesque veneer, a tremor of unease simmered as if the town itself anticipated what was to come. Elliot Carter stood in his sanctuary, the garden on the town's outskirts, where time seemed to hold its breath. Each leaf and petal whispered secrets, entangled in his thoughts as he tried to piece together the mosaic of clues marking this labyrinthine mystery. His mind tangled with the image of the antique key he'd unearthed, not merely a relic of the past, but a call to action hidden in plain sight. The town historian, Amelia Hawthorne, had joined him this morning, her sharp eyes scanning the lush greenery with an almost reverent curiosity. Her presence was a beacon of knowledge and clarity, vital in navigating the murky waters of the town's deep-seated secrets. "We're standing on the brink of something, Elliot," Amelia mused, drawing close to a flowering vine that clung precariously to an old oak. "The festival disguises so much, doesn't it? The reverence, the rituals. It's a veil." Elliot nodded, his gaze far away, fixed on a point only he could see. "It's not just a celebration," he replied, his voice low, almost swallowed by the rustling leaves. "It's a cover, a way to forget family grievances, injustices that remain unpunished." Amelia leaned in, her voice tinged with urgency. "The coded messages you mentioned, hidden in the festival garments, you're sure they're related?" She paused, her eyes flickering over the garden blooms. "I've been examining documents passed down through my family. There are references to symbols similar to those you described, embedded in ceremonial attire." Elliot turned, meeting her gaze with an intensity that matched her own. "Every piece fits, Amelia. The garments, the paintings, even the stories we tell our children, it all aligns. We just need to follow the threads." Their journey took them from the garden sanctum to the weather-beaten expanse of Whispering Pines estate, its decay an ever-present reminder of time's relentless march. Elliot and Amelia approached the mansion, their feet crunching over the gravel driveway. The estate loomed like a ghost of its former grandeur, each shuttered window and vine-draped gable echoing memories of a bygone era. As the pair stepped inside, the air was thick with dust and nostalgia, a palimpsest of forgotten dreams trapped within the crumbling walls. Faded portraits lined the corridors, eyes watching as if to guard the secrets hidden within. "In here," Amelia directed, leading Elliot to the hidden research room concealed behind a deceitful bookshelf. It was a sanctuary of sorts, a treasure trove of old documents and cryptic writings. The flickering light from their lanterns danced across the room, longing shadows stretching back into corners veiled in mystery. Elliot moved with purpose, his fingers grazing the spine of time-worn tomes, his eyes scanning scrolls written in handwritings not unlike his own, remnants of families intertwined with his own history. And there it was, the cryptic letter he'd found during his initial search, the letter that spoke in riddles about a chamber's location, as well as allegorical truths from the past. "Can you make any more sense of it now?" Amelia asked, peering over his shoulder, the anticipation palpable in her voice. Elliot exhaled slowly, tracing the delicately scripted words. It's more than directions, it speaks of redress, of setting right what time has mudded. He paused at one line, where the giant of wood counts the years. His thoughts wandered to St. Elspeth's church and its grandfather clock, a wooden sentinel keeping a vigil over the town. Could it be the clock? Amelia queried softly, her mind racing alongside his own. Do we dare trust it to unveil more than just time? Elliot nodded, conviction hardening his resolve. Yes, and it's about time we confronted what lies beneath its ticking facade. The path to St. Elspeth's church was awash with memories for Elliot, each step a brush with his own buried past. The church, with its solemn steeple touching the heavens, stood as a pillar of tradition and unexamined truths, a structure both familiar and enigmatic. He and Amelia walked through the churchyard, a domain of weathered gravestones, each bearing cryptic symbols speaking of lives interwoven with the town's tapestry. The grave of his lost loved one stood there among them, a silent monument to the past, injustices this investigation had uncovered. Inside, the air was vie with incense and prayers of old, the stained glass casting jewel-toned shadows across the stone floor. The grandfather clock was a majestic presence at the end of the nave, its pendulum swinging like a metronome, marking time's passage. This is it, Elliot murmured, his hand resting on the clock's ancient wood polished by years of devoted hands. Let's find what it's been counting down to. Amelia stood beside him, reverent yet poised. It might not be a passage, you know. It could be a mechanism. Perhaps the final stroke of midnight hides something more than the witching hour. As if driven by a shared impulse, they both reached for the clock, examining every intricate carving, every hidden niche. It was a moment suspended in the cusp of revelation and secrecy. Elliot's fingers stilled over a subtle indentation, a near-invisible groove suggesting more than mere decoration. With a press and a twist, the mechanism clicked. Time slowed, then stilled as the clock face split open to reveal a staircase spiraling down into darkness. Do we go? Amelia breathed, the excitement layered with apprehension. Elliot's answer was in his steps as he descended, leaving behind the world of shadows for truths yet unseen, the ghostly chimes of the grandfather clock fading into silence as they delved deeper into the unknown. The final scene ended with an echo of unresolved questions, the descent into the darkened stairwell leaving their fate suspended in the silent promise of discovery. The secrets buried beneath Shady Grove were waiting, their whispers eager to wrap around hearts and minds, pulling Elliot and Amelia ever further into the maze of history's unyielding grasp. Chapter 9. The Shrouded Festival. The town of Shady Grove was cloaked in evening's embrace, the sky above painted with hues of deep indigo and scattered stars peeking through the tapestry. The air trembled with anticipation as vibrant lanterns flickered to life along the cobblestone paths leading to the heart of the town square. The Ancestors' Light Festival, a spectacle celebrated for generations, was a rare merging of solemnity and celebration, a tapestry of lights and shadows reflecting the very souls of its secretive inhabitants. Elliot Carter walked cautiously among the gathering crowd, his heart a blend of trepidation and determination. The whispers of Shady Grove's ancient families were like ghosts accompanying his every step, each whispered accusation and hushed secret lending weight to his burdened thoughts. His eyes, ever watchful, scanned the multitude of faces, young and old, that converged tonight under the guise of unity, all while concealing truths that longed to break free from the silence. He met the young historian, Lydia Moore, by the edge of the square. Her wide eyes, usually filled with the promise of discovery, were now shadowed by the revelations they had unearthed. "The garments," she uttered, a biting chill accompanying her words. "They hold the key." "The patterns of light and symbols?" Elliot asked, recalling their clandestine study of the festival robes earlier, in which they uncovered the messages woven into the very fabric, a code of sorts, leading them closer to the heart of the town's mystery. "Yes," Lydia confirmed, her voice as much a whisper as the rustling leaves above. Underneath the festival's face lies the truth of a darker past. Those who wove these garments knew their symbolism could hide what history sought to forget. Elliot nodded, the weight of their discovery pressing upon him. The past is like the shadows, isn't it, Lydia? Constantly present, though not always illuminated. As the clock of St. Elspeth struck the hour, its resonating toll a signal lost to the celebratory hum, Elliot found himself deep within the thickets of those gathered. He kept close watch on the expressions, joyous facades masking stories untold, and his heart seized upon seeing Edward Langley, the suspicious old townsman, rooted to a spot near the steps of the old mansion, Whispering Pines. Edward's face bore wrinkles mapped with tales of yore, each etched line speaking louder than any voice. Once a revered member of this community, now seen by many as its oracle of the unconventional, his knowledge was as much feared as it was dismissed. "Elliot," Edward beckoned, his countenance softened under the dim light. "Aren't you here to enjoy the festivities?" "I'm here to understand them," Elliot replied plainly, sensing an opportunity within Edward's seldom-open demeanor. Edward chuckled, his laughter like the creaking timbers of the mansion at night. "Understanding, like this town's past, is ever elusive. But beware, boy, revelation is a double-edged sword." Glancing back to the stares of townsfolk loosely gathered around them, Elliot whispered, "Is it true, then, that the festival's origins are woven with secrets they hope to bury?" Edward's gaze shifted, retreating momentarily into the haziness of memory. "Our Esther's, they left more than just traditions. In their prayers, Elliot, lie confessions masked by prayers and songs. The garments, they keep those voices alive." "And the paintings," Elliot pressed lightly, recalling the complex mystery surrounding the restoration work evident in the unnaturally altered canvases. "Part of the same riddle," Edward grunted, a hint of pride mingling with sorrow upon his lips. "Art, unlike words, preserves more than just beauty. It holds the truth that mortals dare not whisper aloud." The night deepened, the festival's climax nearing with the lighting of the final lantern, symbol of guiding ancestors' spirits. Yet, Elliot's journey was far from its zenith. Rather, the revelations seemed to draw him further into the labyrinth of his mind and the town's storied past. In the shadows of the night, as lanterns flickered a dance against the stone walls, Elliot found himself peering into the elusive heart of Shady Grove's secrets, a convergence at what the townsfolk termed the Old Whispering Well. Yet to him, it was more than a destination. It embodied both the genesis and resolution to the mystery that gnawed at his soul. "Where echoes linger, so do their truths," Lydia had whispered earlier, sparking a flame of hope within his persistent doubt. Yet it was the skeptical journalist, maneuvering through the crowd with his cynical smile, who laid fresh paths to follow. "To think," the journalist mused, joining Elliot by the well, "a town so small holds a mystery vast enough to eclipse its modest spires." Elliot gave a nod of agreement. "It's as though we're on the verge of uncovering a testament as vast as the skies, and just as unreachable. As tangible as the stars overhead," the journalist conceded, "and as eternal. Imagine one day the world could know the significance of this night, this festival." "Or the horror," Elliot added softly, the weight of his words crushing though unuttered. As the evening wore on, the crowd's energy waned, yet the anticipation only grew sharper, a taut thread threatening to snap at any moment. And then, amid the closure of celebrations, a cry, a voice from the depths of the crowd, shattered the tranquil facade. "It's gone missing, the final lantern," a voice shouted, its owner lost amongst the throngs. A ripple of confusion and alarm spread like wildfire. Elliot and his companions glanced at each other, questions unspoken but deeply shared in their gaze. "Do you think," Lydia began, her eyes locking onto Elliot. "It must be part of it," he surmised, feeling the precipice of discovery within reach. The underlying truth was this: what was happening now was no accident. The missing lantern was a piece of their unfolding puzzle. And thus, the night deepened in mystery, leaving Elliot carousing on the edge of darkened possibilities, his resolve tested against the shadows this town seemed forever bound to. The conclusion was just beyond reach, beckoning him further into the undertow of secrets harbored within Shady Grove. Balancing on that knife's edge, Elliot stood poised before the well, his heart between beats as the night's culmination loomed not as an ending but a prelude. In the darkness, where ancestors' secrets and the town's living breath melded, Elliot understood that the light they sought might never truly shine. But perhaps, in the dance of shadow and light, the answer lay, not in solving all, but in understanding the cyclical nature of hidden truths. The festival continued, townsfolk dispersing yet ever aware. Elliot's quest turned more urgent, the missing lantern a testament of what remained to be discovered. A flicker in the darkness yet unseen, a whisper yet to be caught. Every piece of evidence came to rest in this moment, weaving Elliot into the fabric of the town's narrative, a constellation of identities and histories that stretched beyond the flesh and forms of the inhabitants around him. But the night was not yet done. Its tale twisted further into the dense enigma lying beneath echoes and festival lights. The air, as the night pulled tighter around the hearts of Shady Grove's keepers and secrets, whispered a promise. A revelation would come, and with it, release or forever grief. Elliot stood, plotting his next move, unraveling the next veil of darkness, each breath a testament to his relentless pursuit of a truth long buried, yet forever haunting. Chapter 10. Whispers in the Attic. The town of Shady Grove lay shrouded in the early morning mist, an ethereal veil over its cobblestone streets and towering oaks. The birds were beginning their gentle chorus as the sun cast its first tentative rays over the weathered colonial houses. A crisp autumnal breeze carried with it the faint scent of wood smoke and the promise of changing seasons, weaving an atmosphere both familiar and foreboding. Elliot Carter stood at the edge of his sanctuary garden, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun pierced the veil, casty. Long shadows that danced across the vibrant patchwork of flora. It was here, amidst nature's embrace, that Elliot sought solace from the ghosts of his past and the specters of the present. Yet today, even his sacred refuge could not offer reprieve. He was haunted by the echoes of secrets recently unearthed, secrets that threatened to intertwine his personal history with the town's long-buried truths. He turned his gaze to the looming silhouette of the Whispering Pines estate, where dust and decay clung to memories of opulence. Inside those walls, hidden beneath layers of dust and mystery, were the answers he sought, the key to unlocking the chamber that held both his past and the town's shadowy crimes. The musty scent of aged wood and faded grandeur greeted Elliot as he stepped into the main hall of Whispering Pines estate. Shadows loomed in the corners, cast by the fractured light filtering through stained glass windows depicting forgotten family crests. The historian's heart quickened, a sense of belonging mingled with dread. Footsteps rang hollow on the parquet floor as Elliot made his way to the hidden research room, a place he had recently discovered behind a false bookshelf in the library. It was here he hoped to find more pieces of the complex puzzle that was Shady Grove's history, the stories the town had tried so hard to forget. As he pushed the bookshelf open, the dim light revealed stacks of yellowed papers and photographs pinned to the walls like relics of an old detective's case. He sorted through the documents with care, his pulse quickening at the sight of familiar handwriting, a letter from the past mysteriously left for him to find. "Where the giant of wood counts the years," he murmured, recalling the cryptic line from a letter he'd discovered earlier. The grandfather clock in St. Elspeth's church had been the clue. Elliot's mind raced with possibilities, connections forming like constellations in the night sky. But it was not only the physical clues that tormented him. The ghosts of his past feelings, the loss of his childhood friend, and the memories of attic whispers plagued him still. The sound of soft footsteps drew his attention. A shadow fell across the doorway, and a figure emerged from the gloom. "Lost in thought, Elliot?" The skeptical journalist stood there, a trace of irony in his voice but his eyes earnest, searching for truths that Elliot held tight. The journalist was Elliot's unexpected ally. Though their paths had crossed through differing motives, their shared interest in the mysteries of Shady Grove had forged an unlikely alliance. The journalist had first sought a sensational story, but now seemed genuinely invested in discovering the town's truths. "Elliot, I found something," the journalist continued, drawing from his satchel an old tome, its pages faint with time. "It's a genealogy, but look, it mentions a vigilante justice group. Could this link to the Guardian's conspiracy you talked about?" Elliot's eyes widened as he took the tome, fingers tracing the faded ink. "It could. These meetings amongst the old family heads, there's a thread here," he said, voice steady with the realization of new leads. "We must be careful. If the Guardians have been watchful over these secrets for generations, revealing the truth might invite their wrath." Their eyes locked, a mutual understanding passing between them. This journey into the past was both perilous and necessary. The chill of the attic wrapped around Elliot as he pushed open the creaky door, stepping into the dimly lit chamber that was reserved for childhood fears and forgotten memories. Dust motes floated like specters under the weak light, filtering through a small window, casting eerie shapes that danced across generations of discarded belongings. Elliot's childhood friend, now a town historian of some repute, had sent him here. She claimed to hear whispers, inexplicable yet familiar, urging her to revisit the secret corridors of her youth, and she was not alone in that feeling. "Do you feel it too, Elliot?" she asked, her voice, a fragile thread, binding him to the past and the present. Conversation waned, leaving space only for their hesitant footsteps and the occasional groan of the aged floorboards. Elliot nodded. There was a presence here, an unspoken tension that lingered. "What did you hear?" he replied, scanning the cluttered space, eyes alighting on an old trunk, half hidden beneath a burlap sack. "Beneath the oak, a cry," she murmured as if repeating lines from a dream. "I know it's strange, but something happened here." Compelled by her conviction, Elliot knelt beside the trunk, fingers expertly working the rusty latch free. Inside lay a jumble of artifacts, photographs, childhood toys, and at the bottom, a leather-bound diary with initials etched in gold leaf. Opening it carefully, Elliot realized this was a journal of someone who had once lived in the estate, whose final entries hinted at secrets left untold. "Listen to this," Elliot instructed, as he began reading aloud passages that spoke of guilt, of the tribunal that was convened beneath the old oak, an event referenced obliquely in cryptic messages he deciphered alongside the church's lauded grandfather clock. The mud-colored eyes of his friend widened in understanding. This might be what we've been missing. For a brief moment, the barrenness of the attic swelled with potential, full of the hushed whispers of confessions long hidden. But as Elliot closed the diary, the weight of history settling heavily on him, a sound drew their attention, a sharp creak from below, rising through the walls. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, prowling through the forgotten estate like hunters knowing exactly what they sought. "Elliot," his friend warned, urgency cutting through her voice, "we're not alone." The realization was chilling. Shadows coiled in the corners, stretching, shifting, as if the house itself had come alive, eager to protect its secrets. Elliot straightened, clutching the diary as both a shield and evidence of their discovery. They exchanged a glance, a silent pact of trust forged in shared peril. "We need to go. Now," he urged, the weight of their discovery propelling them towards the attic door, ready to face whatever or whoever lay in wait below. Unanswered questions echoed in their minds as they descended, the attic's whispers closing behind them like a silent vow, urging them ever closer to unraveling a mystery that no longer belonged merely to the dusty pages of history. The return to the sanctuary of the garden was swift and wordless, shadows of the estate still sharp in their minds. Elliot and his friend stood amidst the profusion of color and fragrance, once again at the southern heart of the town. The urgency of their escape ebbed into the tranquil flow of the garden's life. Here, amidst nature, they could breathe, collect their thoughts, and plan their next move. "Elliot, the diary changes everything," the historian said, her voice a mingling of excitement and trepidation. "What if this tribunal beneath the oak, the plot, you think it's connected to the family's secrets?" Elliot nodded, still clutching the diary, the physical manifestation of so many lies buried beneath the soil of Shady Grove. "I believe it is, but confronting the past, revealing it could disrupt the town's delicate balance. We have to be sure." Elliot's pulse thrummed with the weight of responsibility and danger. His fingers slipped into the pocket of his jacket, feeling the cold metal of the antique key heavy with meaning, a constant reminder of his mission. The whisper of a breeze stirred the leaves above, and for a moment, Elliot thought he heard something more, an echo from just beyond the edge of consciousness, whispering truths that lay waiting to be uncovered. And then, from somewhere nearby, a rustling in the underbrush, too purposeful to be anything but human. Elliot's senses prickled with alarm as he turned to his friend, eyes wide with the stark reality that they were not safe. "We're being watched," he whispered, knowing that secrecy was their ally only if they remained unseen. His companion nodded, the determination in her eyes a reflection of his own. They were united now, not just by blood ties to the past, but by the shared knowledge that their path demanded courage. In that charged silence, hidden amidst the beauty of the garden, the resolve solidified that there was no turning back. The truth lay in their grasp, and with it, the power to change everything. "Tomorrow," Elliot asserted, drawing her attention, "we reveal what we know. But tonight we plan. There's too much at stake. We have to prepare for confrontations we cannot predict." Her reply was immediate, fueled by conviction. "Agreed. The town's future depends on it." As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Elliot felt the certainty of his choice. The diary, the attic, the whispers, each had brought him to this pivotal moment, a convergence of time and truth he could not ignore. And though the shadows stretched long in the fading light, Elliot knew the dawn would bring not just revelation, but a reckoning with all that lay hidden beneath the surface. For the secrets of Shady Grove would no longer be whispered behind closed doors or locked within dusty tomes. They would rise, brought to light by those courageous enough to face the darkness. Chapter 11. Threads of Deception Unravel. The quietude of Shady Grove in the early morning was deceptive. Golden sunlight filtered through the aged oaks, casting intricate patterns on the cobblestone paths, while the air carried a crispness that whispered promises of a new day. Yet, for those who knew its history, the town's serenity was a facade, concealing layers of secrets woven into its very fabric. Elliot Carter walked through the heart of the town, his footsteps echoing loud. Than his thoughts, the recent discoveries weighed heavily on him. He stopped near the town square, taking a moment to absorb the surroundings. The Whispering Pines estate loomed in the distance, its decaying grandeur a stark reminder of what had been lost. His sanctuary, his garden, beckoned from the fringes, a place of solace turned harbinger of revelations. As he continued, his destination was clear. The modest offices of the town's only newspaper, the Shady Grove Herald, where he hoped to find the skeptical journalist, David Langley. Their recent encounters had changed, as David shifted from a dismissive outsider to an unexpected ally. The air inside the Herald's office was punctuated by the dissonant clatter of typewriters and the quiet murmurs of reporters engaging in hushed conversations. The smell of ink and paper was a tangible presence, mingling with the more intangible scent of stories waiting to be uncovered. "Elliot," David greeted him, gesturing towards a cluttered desk. His voice still carried a hint of skepticism, but there was a newfound eagerness in his eyes. "I was hoping you'd stop by." Elliot nodded, his gaze drifting to the wall where clippings from decades-old editions teetered on the brink of obscurity. "I think you know why I'm here." David inclined his head. "You're looking for something more than what's printed on these pages, the truth behind the festival, behind the town itself. "I am," Elliot admitted, his fingers tracing an invisible arc over the yellowed paper. "I need your help, David. The articles, the files, you mentioned someone who claimed to have seen the paintings before they vanished." David leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful shadow crossing his features. "There's an elder in the town, a reclusive figure. Some say he's seen more than any of us, and he might know something about the paintings." "Who?" Elliot urged, feeling the trails of hope like tendrils of light in a darkened wood. "Old Man Withers," David said softly, lowering his voice as if invoking an incantation. "He lives by the edge of the forest." The path to Old Man Withers' cottage wound through dense underbrush and towering pines, each step echoing the pulse of Elliot's racing thoughts. He recalled childhood stories of the mysterious elder, tales layered with both reverence and fear. Yet he trudged on, the murmur of whispered secrets urging him forward. The cottage appeared at last, nestled like a forgotten relic amidst the verdant embrace of nature. An air of forgotten time hovered around it, as if no calendar year had dared to leave its mark. With a steadying breath, Elliot approached, hoping to unravel one more layer of Shady Grove's intricate tapestry. He knocked, the sound producing a cascade of forest echoes. A moment later, the door creaked open to reveal the gaunt figure of Old Man Withers. Eyes, sharp and clear despite their age, regarded Elliot with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. "Elliot Carter," Withers rasped, an unexpected warmth in his voice. "I wondered when you'd find your way here." "Mr. Withers," Elliot began, stepping forward into the somber light of the interior. The cottage was a labyrinth of books, papers, and artifacts, each piece hinting at stories unsaid. "I need to ask you about the festival and the paintings." The old man chuckled, a sound like wind rustling through dry leaves. "The ancestors' light festival or what lies beneath it." Elliot hesitated, then pressed on. "The truth." Withers nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "The paintings, yes, I saw them once, a long time ago. They're not just stolen art, they're maps, keys to understanding what the town has tried to hide." Elliot leaned in, his heart pounding with the promise of answers. "But how? Why?" "The symbols used," Withers replied, his voice a threadbare whisper of knowledge. "Coded messages embedded within layers of pigments. Some are tied to the Guardian's conspiracy you've unearthed." Hours later, Elliot emerged from the shadows of the cottage, his mind buzzing with thoughts and revelations. Old Man Withers' tales were unsettling, yet they had given shape to the nebulous strings of mystery intertwined through Shady Grove. He realized that to untangle the whole truth, he would need to piece together not only the stories he knew, but those hidden in whispers and memories. His path led him next to the church, St. Elspeth's, a cornerstone of both faith and secrets within the town. Its steeple pierced the sky, a constant watchful guardian over Shady Grove's souls and sins. Inside, the air was cool and tinged with incense, both sanctified and imprisoning in its grip on the town's past. Elliot's eyes were drawn to the grandfather clock, the towering giant of wood where each tick seemed to echo an edict of sorts, a reminder of time's dual nature as both healer and miser. As he stood there, lost in the rhythm of time, he sensed he was not alone. He turned to find the young historian, Clara. An echo of determination in her presence. She smiled softly, approaching with an air of half-formed conspiracies. "Elliot, I've made some progress with the festival garments." Her words piqued his interest. "The coded messages." Clara nodded, her excitement barely contained. "They're guidepoints, clues interwoven in the fabric itself. I believe they tie back to locations within the town." He absorbed her revelation, feeling the pieces of the puzzle beginning to slot into place. Together, they turned to the sanctum of the church's archives, the scent of damp parchment and history-soaked leather washing over them. "We need to review everything," Clara urged, her voice vibrant with hope. "The textiles, the archives, maybe there's a pattern we've missed." "There are always patterns," Elliot agreed, his resolve strengthening as they moved toward the vaulted records, a treasury of words and wisdom encrypted in forgotten inks. As they delved into the chronicles of yesteryears, the sound of turning pages seemed akin to the flutter of spirits eager to breathe life into forgotten truths. The hours slipped past, an amalgam of history and discovery, until at last, in a dusty tome, they found what they sought. A ledger detailing the provenance of the festival garments and names veiled in generational anonymity. As dusk descended upon Shady Grove, painting the sky with strokes of lavender and twilight, David Langley stood waiting at Elliot's sanctuary, an unexpected guest surrounded by the chiaroscuro of fading light and shadow. The garden was alive, a sanctuary wrapped in the ephemeral balance between day's last breath and night's first embrace. David turned as Elliot and Clara approached, his journal a wizened companion clutched tightly in hand. "I think we're close," he conceded, his voice tinged with both relief and trepidation. Elliot nodded, exchanging a glance with Clara that spoke of unarticulated determination. "The threads are converging," Elliot remarked softly, feeling the anticipatory static in the air as if nature itself held its breath. "However it ends," Clara added, her gaze sweeping over the blossoms bathed in the soft glow of lanterns. "This is our story, our truth." And as night fell completely, the trio stood united under the canopy of ancient oaks in the garden, guardians of memory, seekers of truth, against the whispered legacies and secrets locked in the soil of Shady Grove. The past, once a weight, now stood as a guidepost toward understanding and redemption. In silence, they collectively resolved to journey toward the well, the ancient whispers promising revelations that could unearth both solace and reckoning, a destination where shadows of the past would meet the light of tomorrow. Chapter 12, Shadows of Revelation, Part 2. The dusk fell like a velvet curtain over Shady Grove, casting elongated shadows on the cobblestone streets. A chill wind swept down from the surrounding hills, rustling the leaves like an orchestra of whispers, promising secrets yet to be uncovered. The air was dense with anticipation, the kind that settles in before a storm, as Elliot stepped into the dimly lit corridor of the Whispering Pines estate. The old mansion was known for its history as much as its decaying grandeur. Intricate woodwork covered the walls, speaking of past splendor now marred by age and neglect. Dust motes danced in the slanted light filtering through cracked windows, seeming alive with stories of yore. Elliot Carter, with an old soul and perpetually curious eyes, walked these halls once more, drawn by a compulsion he could neither fully explain nor ignore. In the flickering light of his lantern, Elliot's footsteps echoed through the silent halls, a quiet symphony of his solitary diligence. He was not alone in his pursuits tonight. The young historian, Claire Hawthorne, walked beside him, clutching her notes as if they were talismans against the unknown. Her eyes were alight with the kind of fervor that only comes from the unearthing of profound truths. "Tell me again, Elliot," Claire spoke, her voice a steady whisper in the semi-darkness, "about the coded messages you found in the festival garments. There might be something there we haven't pieced together." Elliot paused, the weight of the mansion's past settling heavily on his shoulders. "The symbols are consistent with the historical injustices we've been uncovering," he explained patiently. "A forgotten language interwoven into the celebration's very fabric, hidden in plain sight." Claire nodded, scribbling as they spoke. "And this ties into the ancestors' festival how?" "Apparently, the festival was designed to honor the past," Elliot said, his voice growing distant as he recalled the fragile pieces of history they'd pieced together, while simultaneously burying it. The depth of their findings was unsettling. It all pointed to a systematic cover-up of truth, using the town's most cherished tradition as its veil. Shady Grove, it seemed, celebrated not only its ancestors but their sins as well. The air grew colder as they pushed on, reaching the library's threshold at the heart of the Whispering Pines estate. Here lay the cornerstone of Elliot's discoveries, a dusty bookshelf concealing the hidden research room. With a discreet pull, the doorway groaned open, revealing walls lined with aging documents, photographs, and a wealth of secrets restored to life beneath layers of neglect. Inside, the skeptical journalist, Robert Harris, awaited them. His transformation from cynic to ally had been slow but significant, driven by the undeniable weight of evidence. He looked up, acknowledgement in his eyes at the shared journey they undertook. "This place," Robert gestured around at the library's hidden chamber, "is like stepping into a forgotten dimension." Elliot nodded emphatically. "Yet too many of us have chosen to forget, haven't we?" The journalist tapped the documents, his brow furrowed. "Did you see the latest findings?" He pointed to a newspaper article elegantly framed, words now faded but legible. It chronicled a gala at the estate, the photograph revealing portraits in the background. The same works now central to their investigation, allegedly stolen or destroyed during the scandalous theft decades past. Claire examined the photograph closely, tracing its outlines with her fingers. "But look," she exclaimed, "those symbols, they match the ones in the painting we've been trying to decode." It was a link previously unnoticed, a bridge between disparate pieces suddenly made visible. Their assumptions and alternatives rendezvoused at this juncture, each hypothesis reinforcing the other, a tapestry of interwoven clues. The tension grew as night deepened. Outside, the wind sang mournfully through the wisteria-draped veranda, a haunting lament. Within, Elliot and Claire's theory gained momentum, connecting festival symbols with the esoteric language evident in paintings now revealed as forgeries. Lost in calculations and conversation, they failed to notice the presence lurking just beyond the threshold of their shared sanctuary until an unexpected creak of floorboards announced it. Elliot turned sharply, feeling an instinctive ripple of awareness, his senses honed by circumstance. An elderly townsman stood there, silhouetted within door-frame shadows, a familiar visage lined with age, carrying secrets as merciless as time itself. "I thought I might find you here, Mr. Carter," he said, voice gravelly with history. "Mr. Foster," Elliot responded with a slight nod. The town's unofficial custodian of legacy, enigmatic yet ever so knowledgeable. "You know why we're here." "I do." Foster's voice was an ambivalent harmony of regret and resolution. "And I dare say you've begun to uncover truths long held in silence." Elliot implored. Why were they hidden? What threatened the town so much that its very soul was disguised behind folklore and tradition? Foster chuckled, a sound as cracked as the mansion's facade. The past is an unruly beast, a thing we hope to tame but rarely ever do." "The paintings, the journal entries," Claire interjected. "It was all orchestrated. Families at odds with each other, concealed by a different narrative." Foster nodded as though she'd struck a chord, a phantom melody recalled. "Indeed, though what was meant as protection often became a prison." His ambiguities vanished momentarily, replaced by clarity. Their revelations were no longer mere speculation. They were truths actively pursuing resolution. At last, the mansion's mysteries gave way to answers only hinted before. Their predecessors, misplaced loyalties portrayed in stolen artifacts, justice forsaken for pride, a cycle approaching its end with each revelation. Yet, an air of unfulfilled destiny hovered over them, as if urging another step forward. Elliot, Claire, and Robert stood together, a triad bound by purpose, united by the unfolding story. They knew the road before them was fraught with complications, yet eager to honor history with truth, unvarnished by deception. The weight of their endeavors pressed forward like the wind through hollow spaces, the expectation of fulfillment. As they departed from the library chamber, their shadows stretched ahead into a promising dawn, each step carrying hints of a finale that awaited. Though sepulchral and steadfast, the estate doors opened to an outside waiting to challenge fate once unresolved, as Elliot murmured to his companions. "It's not just about solving mysteries, is it?" he reflected, the air imbued with poetic finality. "It's about redefining them." With that, they dispersed, footsteps merging into the lengthening horizon, where darkness was merely a prelude to illumination, no longer constrained by shadows. Chapter 13. The Veil Lifts. The mist was settling over Shady Grove as twilight folded its arms around the town's worn corners. Shadows stretched from trees beside Elliot Carter's sanctuary, casting looming figures against the cobblestones. The annual Ancestors' Light Festival was in full swing, the atmosphere wrapping the town in a hypnotic melody of distant flutes and cheerful laughter. Yet, beneath the festival's surface, the air pulsed with an undercurrent of lingering secrets and unspoken promises. The aged cobblestones beneath Elliot's feet felt like a scattered mosaic of bygone days as he walked toward St. Elspeth's Church. As he drew closer, the dignified steeple seemed to pierce the night sky, a colossal giant of wood and stone marking the years beneath the stars. The stained glass windows flickered with the light of 100 candles, each echoing tales of the past through its hues of ruby and emerald. Elliot entered the church, where the bustling activity of the festival was muted. Here, in solitude, he would find his answers, or so he hoped. The faint scent of aged wood and incense cradled his senses as he meandered through the pews, drawing closer to the pulsating heart of his investigation, the grandfather clock. "Where the giant of wood counts the years," he mouthed inwardly, the cryptic line that had gnawed at his curiosity now stark in its simplicity. In the vestry, Elliot found himself face to face with the skeptical journalist, Henry. The journalist's silhouette was illuminated by the flicker of candlelight bouncing against stacks of old church records. "Did you expect to find secrets tonight?" Henry's voice was laced with sarcasm, yet an underlying respect tempered his tone. Elliot studied his hesitant ally. Not secrets, perhaps just truth. Sometimes they're the same. Henry nodded, his skepticism tempered by a growing camaraderie. "What do you think lies behind it all, Elliot? The tapestries, the paintings, these guarded histories, how do they connect?" "The guardians of this town," Elliot began, choosing his words as if balancing stones on a taut thread. "They've played this charade for generations. I'm convinced the festival masks darker family secrets, echoes from before our time." Henry's pen was poised, an uncharacteristic readiness to grasp Elliot's insights. "The whispers," he prompted, a soft inquiry for clarity. "They are coded messages," Elliot turned, walking towards the towering clock. He ran his fingers over the wood, feeling the carved symbols that had seemed merely decorative before. "Do these look familiar?" Henry squinted, tracing his fingers across the engravings. "The same symbols. I saw them in those paintings the town thinks so dearly of, and on the garments hanging at the festival." Elliot nodded. "They've woven history into these artifacts, each piece a fragment, intentionally displayed throughout town, hoping no one would ever piece them together. Like keeping the scene of a crime forever concealed, yet always on display," Henry mused. And behind those words lay the truth that both exhilarated and terrified Elliot. The truth of betrayal, of deceit, cushioned by time and forgotten lies. Yet here, within the skeleton of the church, the past rasped against the present, a disquieting breath of history brought to life. The moon's pallor embraced Whispering Pines estate, which loomed against the backdrop of starlit sky like a giant's mournful shadow. Its overgrown gardens whispered secrets into the night air, each rustle a countdown to revelation. Elliot, now accompanied by Anna, the young historian, had ventured back to this haunting palace of time-worn grandeur. Torchlight in hand, Anna peered into the hushed hallways. "Elliot, the estate holds what we seek, but these secrets are deep-rooted, entwined with lives that have long faded from history." Elliot's gaze trailed over the dust-encrusted banisters. "Pieces of the past lie behind that false bookshelf. Do you remember?" "Yes, I remember you found a cache of letters there," Anna said, her voice striving to remain steady. They proceeded together, their steps echoing sharply, until they found themselves before the library's secret. With a firm twist and push, Elliot leaned into history's embrace once more, uncovering sheaves of old documents beneath layers of time and cobweb. Anna sifted through the brittle pages carefully. These records! They mention a justice group, the Guardians, meeting secretly, she said, her voice hushed with revelation. Elliot turned, his heartbeat a steady drum. These records, each phrase, every note, they're more telling than we thought. They detail conspiracies linked to the crimes we feared. Anna drew her breath, conceding gravity to the moment. The signals in the festival garb coincide with these notes. It's their way of archiving events, decisions marked in the fabric of our celebrations. Then we're close, Elliot whispered, the final pieces of his once-chained past rising now to quake the present. Their return to town square found the festival in full bloom. Lanterns cast their warm glow. Upon the community, a semblance of unity, where masks were both literal and figurative. As Elliot scanned the crowd, he was confronted with familiar faces, old friends, old foes, each spiritively animated beneath the festival's euphony of color and sound. A child's laugh reached Elliot, a melody laced with innocence, bringing forth memories once locked within Shady Grove's attics, memories now alight in the moon's benevolent gaze. He recognized the melody of the past like an old song, a whisper born on the winds of a friend's recollection. Catching sight of an elderly townswoman, Miss Hilda, whose presence belied the ghosts of time, they exchanged a meaningful nod. There was an unspoken understanding, a recognition of truths that now threaded the present with profound clarity. Amidst the crowd, the suspicious townsman wove through like a predator observing prey. Elliot watched, caught in his gaze a glint of something, a moment of intent, of urgency poised on the brink of oblivion. The townsman approached under the guise of cordial familiarity, yet his eyes sang a tale of tumultuous history. "Elliot, I presume you've learned much," the elder spoke softly, volumes hiding between his words. "The paintings are our enigma," Elliot replied, a measured tone held in patience. "Then trust that their truth is not yours alone to bear," the old man murmured, setting a wrinkled hand on Elliot's shoulder. The mysteries that lingered amidst the lives in Shady Grove were manifold, each thread interweaving a tapestry, extending deep into generational roots and extending outwards into falsehoods exposed. In that embrace of shadows and light, Elliot found clarity, as if orchestrated by life's vigilant hand. In that moment, where doubts trembled under the festival lights, he understood his role in this ancient play of deceptions and revelations. And amidst the unraveling truths echoed the festival songs, a reminder that beneath the quiet surface of tradition, history was alive and brimming, forever patient for its script to reverberate into consciousness. For Elliot, a journey was nearing fulfillment, a path that curved with secrets and rose to meet the dawn of understanding. And as lanterns flickered against the whispering winds, Shady Grove breathed, a keeper of dreams and tales, and the mysteries that would forever dance beneath its watchful steeple and whispered shadows. Chapter 14. Revelations in the Shadows. As twilight descended upon Shady Grove, the town's narrow streets echoed with the rustle of fallen leaves and the distant whisper of the wind weaving through the trees. The lanterns lining the cobblestone paths flickered to life, casting an amber glow that danced upon the weathered facades of colonial houses. Across the town square, the imposing silhouette of Whispering Pines estate stood like a sentinel, guarding its secrets with a silent, watchful gaze. Elliot Carter stood before the estate's wrought iron gate, keys he had unearthed clutched tightly in his hand. His breath was visible in the crisp evening air, a reminder of the autumn chill creeping in. The estate, once vibrant with laughter and the clinking of glasses, now loomed solemnly under the moonlight, a vast labyrinth of memories both cherished and haunting. "You sure about this, Elliot?" asked Sarah, the young historian, her voice a blend of curiosity and trepidation. She had joined him after a day spent unraveling fabric patterns from festival garments, patterns she believed held the key to untold stories of the ancestors' light festival. Elliot nodded, his resolve mirrored in the tense line of his jaw. "If there's anything left to learn, it will be inside. The answers we seek hide in plain sight, just waiting to be uncovered. Sarah pulled her coat tighter, a shiver less from the cold and more from anticipation. Lead the way, then. What secrets does the estate hold? As the gate creaked open, Elliot and Sarah exchanged a glance, one both of alliance and apprehension, as they stepped onto the gravel path leading to the main entrance. Inside Whispering Pines estate, the air hung heavy with dust and the scent of old wood. Shadows stretched long in the dimly lit corridors, where the tick of a distant clock mingled with the echo of their footsteps. The grandeur of a bygone era lived here, but so did its ghostly whispers, a tapestry of forgotten tales woven into the threads of tattered drapes and the crumbling masonry. Elliot navigated the hallways with familiarity, stopping before a grand library. The room, once a haven of knowledge, now lay in disrepair. Books, their spines broken, lined shelves haphazardly, while the scent of mildew lingered in the air. His eyes darted to the far wall, where a false bookshelf concealed a hidden chamber, the heart of the estate's mysteries. "Hidden behind those books," said Elliot quietly, running his fingers over the spine of history of Shady Grove, Vol. II. With a gentle push, the entire shelf swung aside, revealing a narrow passageway swallowed by shadows. Sarah peered in, her eyes widening. "You weren't kidding. This is like stepping into another world." They moved cautiously, their steps echoing softly. The passage led to a room filled with relics of the past, dust-covered manuscripts, faded photographs, and a chandelier swaying in an unseen breeze. A desk stood in the center, littered with journals and a single open ledger upon which an old, fragile letter lay. "This could be it," Sarah breathed as she picked up the letter, unfurling its delicate folds. The script was ornate, each word a potential key to answers long buried. "Look at this! Codes and symbols. They might explain the festival's true origins." Elliot glanced over her shoulder, his heart pounding at the prospect of finally uncovering the truth. These aren't just directions or history. They're confessions, embedded in tradition. Sarah nodded, her eyes alight with realization. "It's like a map drawn with words, leading us through the town's hidden past." The room seemed to hum with an energy all its own, urging them onward, deeper into the mysteries of Shady Grove. The night deepened, and with each passing moment, the town outside seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Elliot and Sarah delved into the ledger, compiling notes and piecing together the cryptic messages. The hours slipped by, punctuated by their whispered exchanges and the rustling of parchment. "Here's another entry," said Sarah, adjusting her glasses. "It mentions a gathering of guardians. Could this be related to the old families?" "The Guardians' conspiracy," Elliot murmured, recalling his previous findings. Their secret meetings were more than just family dialogues. They were orchestrating something, protecting dark legacies. A sudden noise from behind them made Sarah jump. "Did you hear that?" Elliot turned, senses heightened. "Stay close. It might just be the wind, but we can't be too careful." They moved cautiously, every creak of the floorboards alerting them to the possibility of being watched, even here, entrenched in the heart of long-abandoned rooms. But no further sounds pursued them as they pressed on. "This ledger," Elliot said, with a new urgency in his voice. "It's a log of their dealings, their secrets, and it all seems to point towards the well." Sarah's eyes widened. "The old Whispering Well? That place is legendary. If what we believe is true, it could be pivotal to the story. But how do we connect these disparate pieces?" "The only way," Elliot whispered, as he traced a finger over the ledger's final entry, "is to dive deeper into the hidden messages, the codes within and beyond these walls." As the first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the shuttered windows, the estate took on a new character, one that ushered out the shadows and invited the revelations into the open. Elliot and Sarah emerged from the depths of the estate, their minds swarming with possibilities, untested theories and partial truths ripe for exploration. Outside, the world had changed, if only slightly. Shady Grove seemed to hold the dawn close, as if cradling its promise of new beginnings. Elliot felt a renewed determination take root, tempered by the knowledge of just how intricate and personal the mysteries were becoming. "Thank you for being here," he told Sarah, the sincerity in his voice unmissable, as they paused at the top of the hill leading down to the town. Sarah smiled, the warmth of it cutting through the chill morning air. "You're not alone in this, Elliot. We're all shadowed by the past, but together, maybe we can finally bring the truth to light." The promise of answers lay spread before them in the winding paths and stories yet unwritten in the cobbled streets of Shady Grove. Together, they descended from the estate, two shadows among many, entwined in the legacy they sought to reveal. In the quiet morning light, one thing was clear: their journey into the depths of Shady Grove's secrets was far from over. But with courage and resolve, they would press on, unearthing truths that had long been hidden and perhaps, along the way, find the healing they both so fervently sought. And behind them, the Whispering Pines estate stood silent once more, an ever-watchful guardian of tales told and untold, the sun casting long shadows over its facade and whispering of stories yet to come. Chapter 15. Shadows Under the Festival Lights. The town of Shady Grove was illuminated by the soft, golden glow of lanterns strung up for the ancestors' light festival. The atmosphere was intoxicating, filled with the scent of spiced cider and the melody of an old accordion playing a tune that carried nostalgia with every note. The flicker of flames cast dancing shadows on the cobblestone streets, like phantoms of the past blending in with the present. The town's inhabitants, clad in traditional garments, moved in a slow, rhythmic procession towards the Whispering Pines estate, a ritual that had been observed for generations. Elliot Carter stood at the perimeter, watching the colorful parade with a mixture of anxiety and intrigue. The festival, with its pomp and ritual, was less of a celebration for him and more of an unfolding mystery. The recent discoveries, the cryptic letter, the key to a hidden chamber, supplemented by the etchings on the paintings, were battering his mind incessantly. He was drawn to the festival's heart, to the core of its secrets and illumination. Beside him, Miranda, the young town historian, held a bundle of old garments said to carry coded messages sewn by the ancestors. Her face was flushed with a mix of scholarly excitement and dread, knowing the implications of what they might uncover. "We need to get closer to the elders," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the leading group of townspeople, where the most respected and secretive families were enrobed in their ceremonial garb. Elliot nodded, his resolve set. They moved stealthily through the crowd, mingling with the couples and families under the spectrum of lantern-lit colors that swirled above them. As they approached the procession's vanguard, the music grew louder, carrying a lilt of sorrow mixed with hope, a harmony that mirrored the town's own history. The heart of the procession halted at the gates of Whispering Pines estate, where the elders gathered around the ancient fountain, cracked but majestic under flickering torches. The atmosphere was reverent, tinged with a sense of an impending revelation. Here, the town folk awaited the high priest, an honorary position filled by the oldest family member of Shady Grove, to offer prayers and blessings to the ancestors. As the townspeople gathered, Elliot spotted the skeptical journalist, Darcy, lurking at the edge of the assembly. His notebook was tucked under one arm, and a lens hanging around his neck captured fleeting snapshots of the ceremony. Noticing Elliot, Darcy made his way over, his expression inscrutable yet curious. "Didn't expect to see you here, Carter," said Darcy, his voice almost masked by the murmuring crowd. "I thought you might not appreciate the spectacle." "There's more to see than just the spectacle, Darcy," Elliot replied, his words carrying an underlying challenge. Darcy raised an eyebrow, intrigued, while flicking through the pages of his notebook. "You're not wrong. These festivals, I've learned, tend to have layers, but if there's something to uncover, it's better we work together." "Agreed," Elliot replied, watching the procession unfold before them. "There's more here than meets the eye." Their conversation was cut short as the high priest, poised by the fountain, began his incantations in an ancient dialect, his voice rising with the crescendo of the instrumental harmony from the gathered musicians. It was a haunting melody, woven with spells of sanctity, guiding the past's exoneration. The townsfolk bowed their heads in solemnity, and the hush of respect fell like a veil over the crowd. Elliot watched as the ceremonial garments of the elders rippled with the enchanting rhythm, the shimmering light revealing symbols and patterns stitched into the fabric. These codes, meticulously interwoven with thread, held the whispers of untold stories passed from one lineage to another. Miranda nudged him, eyes widening, as they both realized the connections tying these garments to the paintings in the estate. The symbols were identical to those hidden within the artwork, suggesting a living record sewn into the very traditions revered in Shady Grove. As the ceremony continued, Elliot, Miranda, and Darcy steeped deeper into the implications of their discoveries. Elliot's mind spun with possibilities. The intertwined fates of historic mysteries and unrequited justice offered him new insight. The garments, the coded messages, the cryptic letter, all pointed towards a conspiratorial harmony, a purposefulness binding the town's past in ways shrouded by secrecy. The procession began to move again, this time towards the church, where St. Elspeth stood somberly against the night sky, its stained glass softly glowing with the illuminated stories of Shady Grove. It was here that another mystery lay tangled with time, the giant clock's face, inert yet allegorical. Joining the trailing throng entering the churchyard, Elliot found himself drawn to the gravestones, each marked with inscriptions that wove tales of family glory and disgrace. The juxtaposition of life and death, of secrets and proclamations within this space, was overwhelming. Each stone told a fragment of the elusive heritage the town clung to yet feared revealing. As the crowd settled inside the chapel, whispers of the community mingled with the echoes of the organ's ethereal music. Elliot could feel the weight of the oak key resting in his pocket, as if urging him forward, a reminder of his quest and the connection between the concealed and the revealed. Beside him, Darcy whispered, "What do you intend to find here?" "The closure to a past that's been haunting us all," Elliot replied with resolute determination. Inside the dim light of the church, Elliot watched as the town's matriarchs and patriarchs took their place at the chancel, guiding the sacred chants that would transcend beyond mere tradition to an invocation of hidden truths. The skeptical journalist, once an outsider, now stood shoulder to shoulder with them, drawn by an unspoken understanding. Beside him, the young historian, Miranda, held the garment close, decoding its complex web of symbolism. The climax of the festival approached, with the townspeople's fervor reaching its zenith. The key ceremonies were laden with metaphor and dipped in secrecy. Elliot felt poised at the threshold of discovery, his soul aligned with the tremor of anticipation that rippled through the crowd. Suddenly, a voice, silken yet commanding, rose from the altar. An orator stepped forth, revealing his face, one that Elliot recognized from the portraits in the Whispering Pines estate, an enigmatic elder whose family had loomed large in the annals of Shady Grove's history. "It is time," the elder intoned, "to lift the shadows, to speak of the past that binds us, of the truth veiled beneath." The statement hung in the air, suspended with ominous gravity. Elliot knew this was the moment to unravel the festival's enigma, the weight of the town's legacy resting upon that key revelation. With the orator poised to disclose the truths once buried, Elliot caught a glimpse of a familiar figure slipping out of view, disappearing behind the ornate columns of the church. It was the suspicious elderly townsman, his presence a haunting reminder of deeper machinations at play. Elliot exchanged a knowing glance with Miranda and Darcy. They understood the urgency springing from their discovery's momentum. Quietly excusing themselves, the trio stealthily followed the mysterious figure's retreat, weaving through the corridors hollowed with echoes of ancient hymns. The passage narrowed, leading towards a secluded chamber, concealed from the public eye. Inside, in the dim illumination cast by a single flickering torch, the elderly townsman stood, the veil of his grizzled countenance thinly disguising the turmoil within. His eyes, usually sharp with judgment, now bled weariness as they met Elliot's determined gaze. Upon entering the chamber, the overarching conspiracy started to unravel. Maps were strewn across the table, alongside historical documents and coded ledgers. Here, dappled with the golden light of the flickering flame, the festival's secrets lay bare, each evidence point an unspoken testament to the vengeance and burden that shadowed the town's legacy. "I never meant for it to reach this day," the elderly townsman muttered, his voice heavy with resignation. "The stories we hide, the reasons we orchestrate this festival." Elliot, steady in his resolve, stepped forward with Miranda and Darcy at his sides. "We all have our parts to play in this town's narrative, to unsettle the equilibrium so deeply set in secrets." The skeptical journalist stepped forward, his expression resolute. "But your lies have kept this town doused in the shadows of ignorance for too long." The elderly townsman lowered his gaze, highlighting the guilt carved into his solemn features. "The past demands balance. The truth must align with redemption," he whispered, almost to himself. As the trio absorbed the weight of his confession and anticipated clearing the web of deception, the elderly townsman gestured towards the documents. "These are what binds us to this secret," he said, indicating the maps and ledgers. A labyrinth of truth, they were etched with ancient runes and cryptic symbols, a cosmic alignment fueling the theater of traditions performed, year upon year. With silent acknowledgement amongst them, Miranda moved towards the documents, unrolling them carefully upon the table's polished surface. Symbols patterned the parchment with complexity and intent, mirroring the designs stitched within the festival garments. As Miranda worked meticulously through the historical threads, Darcy documented each revelation with passionate fervor, their collaboration necessary to decipher the events that transpired generations past. A confluence of tales interwoven within the shrouded mystery of the paintings and the garments. Elliot positioned himself at the table's edge, absorbing the orbit of history as it unfolded across the strewn evidence. Driven by his role as the emotional tether to Shady Grove's secrets, he recalled the power of the cryptic letter, its meanings juxtaposed now upon illuminated maps, guided by implicit memory and contextual truths. The answers revealed themselves through intricate design and illuminated spirit. The resolution wasn't driven by mere necessity, but the cultivation of time's innate. Vitable return, a cordial for future harmony, bred from unacknowledged injustice, hovering balance, and tethered luminance. And thus, as the maps merged coherently, an undeniable truth emerged from the shadows, casting clarity over Shady Grove, carved not by written word alone, but by voices carried through winds, whispering secrets long conspired to be forgotten. In the silence of shared understanding, Elliot, Miranda, and Darcy prepared to return, their resolve now poised to awaken the dormant introspection of this festival's nightly dance. The town waited outside, amid the echoes of time. But now the story held a new resonance, a song not sung by loneliness, but voiced proudly by the courage of collective memory and shared legacy. Echoing the chants echoed high above, tethered by the festival lantern's soft shimmer, Shady Grove's future emerged, unfettered, blushing with acknowledged spirit, fostered by the ensemble of truth beneath the shadows of light. At that moment, Elliot understood. The town's story wasn't merely an enigma to solve, but a conduit of enduring significance, a shared clarity to embrace, emerge, and cherish, bathed eternally in the warmth of revelation.